Hello there. So the revolving door between corporate business and government keeps turning. One of the big faces of the health emergency, Jonathan Van Tam, has quit the public sector to join one of the corporate main players in the health emergency, Moderna. Yes, England's former Deputy Chief Medical Officer, who some regard as some sort of celeb, has now taken the job as Senior Medical Consultant at the big pharma company. Known by the three-letter acronym as JVT, he used to attend some of the daily pandemic press briefings and regale us with football analogies. And he was also a member of the Roll Your Sleeves Up task force, which made decisions on all related supply contracts and major investments in manufacturing and clinical opportunities. And at the same time, we hear that COVID jab manufacturers are preparing to make their products directly available to the UK public through private sales. COVID booster vaccines are expected to become available for the UK public to buy for the first time after health officials supported the proposal, says The Guardian. And Moderna has said it is exploring the possibility and viability of such a programme. And a spokesperson for the UK Health Security Agency, the UKHSA, said, "As far as we're concerned, the ball is in the court of the manufacturers to develop the market with private healthcare providers." And I'm sure they will be more than happy to do just that. And of course, part of the attraction is that there is that lack of liability situation, on the basis that imposing a liability on jab producers would stifle advances in preventative medicine, with the government paying out up to £120,000 based on the individual situation. But in taking it, you run the risk of having other benefits you may be on reduced. They give with one hand and take with the other as usual. You can sue the company directly as well, but it seems that if the jab has inherent dangers as part of its makeup, then they are safe. And one supposes private sales will be deemed as informed consent anyway. Interestingly, this is being touted by some as a travel jab. Maybe it's destined to appear on this emerging WHO Global Health Certificate as a requirement to travel. You know, part of the global health emergency response that the WHO is setting up and that the UK government is going to sign us up to. Anyway, back to JVT. Moderna has, as far as I can see, refused to disclose Van Tam's fee structure. But if he does add value to Moderna, he'll also be adding value to Rishi Sunak's coffers, because the company that Sunak co-founded, Telamay, bought into Moderna shares, and these rocketed in value during the pandemic. However, it must be remembered that according to the rules, while he's in politics, any of Sunak's interests like these have to be operated by a third party in a blind trust, to which he has no access. Anyway, back to Van Tam. He is just the latest in the revolving door joining big business to government. Sajid Javid, a former Tory UK Chancellor, joined JP Morgan. And David Cameron, a former Tory PM no less, ended up lobbying for Greensill Capital. And we also have Transparency UK, an anti-corruption campaign group, saying, with a 5-point decline since 2021, the UK, on 73 points, stands as a warning that countries in the top tier of the index are still vulnerable to the perception of corruption and undue influence. Public trust in government is worryingly low after a string of political sleaze and public spending scandals, which showcased how easily political access could be bought by private interests and exposed loopholes that let public officials regulate their own conduct. Not a good look, is it? The UK pays France 480 million quid, And for what? We pay more money than ever to the French authorities to stop the English Channel small boat crossings, and their delivery rate falls, reports the Telegraph. And this 480 million quid, which is nearly £500 million by the way, makes the 54 million we paid in 2021 pale into insignificance. But this extra huge wedge of cash has seen the French success rate of stopping the boats drop from 45.8% to 45.2%, i.e. a slight drop. But here's the real point. There have been fewer attempted crossings this year due to bad weather. But the French authorities were only able to stop 13,759 since the start of the year, a significant drop from the previous year's 17,032. You'd have thought that with more resources brought to bear with this 480 million quid, that the figures for this year would be far higher. Just more proof that it's not always the amount of dosh you throw at something that works. No, it's always the amount of will that is brought to bear that brings the real results. And these numbers demonstrate no increased will in France to deal with this problem. Now some people claim that it is all down to Brexit, that if we'd stayed in the EU and within the Dublin agreements, we could return them. No. Under that Dublin Agreement, we returned far fewer than we were forced to accept. It was a one-way street, and it was Migration Watch that advised the government not to stay in that agreement. And I don't think anything would be much different if we were still in the EU today anyway. In fact, it would probably be worse, as we'd be part of this obvious push to share everyone around the rest of Europe. And remember, as I've pointed out before, the EU is in the process of drawing up new laws, a regulation in fact which is their highest level of law and is binding instantly on all member states. And these new laws will force each member state to take in 30,000 annually, or pay 20,000 euros into a new refugee support system fund for every one they do not take. So if you take none, it'll cost the country 600 million euros. And this new system will replace the Dublin Agreement. So if we were still in the EU, that's what we would be preparing to do. Anyway, it's telling that the French are not applying their own laws, nor those required by maritime safety regulations. These boats are actually embarking on a commercial, paid-for, international passage between the EU waters and UK waters, in unseaworthy craft. Also, in French waters, it is an offence to go to sea in a vessel with a motor with a power rating greater than 6 horsepower, unless you've qualified for a licence to do so. I wonder what the HP rating of the engines in some of those boats is. And surely it must be an offence in France to knowingly endanger the lives of children in such craft within French waters. And remember the 2021 tragedy where 27 people sadly drowned off the French coast while engaged in one of these crossings? Well, it turns out that 15 calls from the boat were ignored by French authorities. And 9 people were questioned, and 5 soldiers have been charged earlier this year with failing to assist those on the boat. It took 10 hours for the authorities to respond, but only after fishermen intervened. So we have to ask how much more of this is going on. Are they relying on the UK Border Force and the RNLI to save the day, even in French waters? Seems so, doesn't it? How callous is that? It's not the UK people who are calling for a stop to this life-taking, money-making racket that are the bad ones.